You checked your phone 3 times during that conversation. Not because you were bored, because your friend was telling you about someone else. Who said what? Who did what? Who was dating who? You leaned in closer. Your brain lit up like a slot machine. You call it catching up. Scientists call it something much older. Gossip. And here's the strange part. You think it is a bad habit, a guilty pleasure, something petty people do when they run out of real things to talk about. But the real answer is far stranger. Gossip is not a flaw in human nature. It is the reason human nature exists at all. Think about the last time someone told you a secret about a coworker. Your ears perked up. Your body leaned forward. You probably lowered your voice too, even if no one else was around. That reaction was not learned. It was inherited from people who lived tens of thousands of years before phones, before writing, before cities of any kind. Back then, information was survival. Not information about weather or food, though that mattered too. Information about people. Who could be trusted? Who would steal your share of the meat? Who would protect you if a rival group attacked? There was no police, no courts, no background checks. There was only word of mouth. And word of mouth was gossip. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent years studying primate social groups, and he noticed something odd. The bigger the social group of a species, the bigger its brain, specifically the neocortex, the part responsible for complex thought. Humans have unusually large social groups compared to our brain size would predict from other primates alone. Dunbar proposed a reason. Human brains did not just grow to handle tools or hunting. They grew to handle relationships. Dozens of them. Hundreds in some cases. And tracking that many relationships takes enormous mental effort. How do you keep track of 150 people? Who is reliable? Who is dangerous? Who owes who a favor? You cannot watch everyone all the time. So you talk. You ask. You listen. Dunbar called this social grooming through language. Chimpanzees groom each other physically, picking through fur for hours, and that grooming builds trust and alliances. Humans groom too, just with words instead of fingers. That is what gossip really is. Not idle chatter. A survival tool disguised as conversation. Here is where it gets stranger. Dunbar estimated that roughly 60% of all human conversation is social in nature. Not business, not weather. People talking about other people. 60%. Next time you are in a group chat, count how much of it is actually about someone who is not in the chat. You will be surprised how close that number holds up. But why would evolution favor talking about others instead of, say, talking about mammoths or medicine? Because reputation was currency. If you knew who was generous and who was selfish, you could choose who to trust with your life. Literally, in small hunter-gatherer bands, cooperation determined who ate and who starved, who got protection during a raid and who did not. Gossip let people vet each other without every person needing a personal history with every other person. It spread reputation faster than direct experience ever could. Imagine trying to learn firsthand whether every single person in your group was trustworthy. It would take a lifetime. Gossip shortcut that process. One person's bad experience became everyone's warning. One person's good deed became everyone's reason to include them next time. This is not just useful. It is efficient in a way almost nothing else in early human life was. There's a reason this feels so good, too. When you hear a juicy piece of information about someone else, dopamine spikes in your brain, the same neurotransmitter tied to food, to social reward, to almost anything that feels pleasurable. Researchers studying gossip have found that people are willing to pay, literally give up money, just for the chance to hear gossip about high-status individuals. That is how strong the pull is. Not entertainment. Wiring. The psychologist Frank McAndrew has spent decades researching why gossip persists across every culture ever studied. No society, anywhere, at any point in recorded history, has been found without it. McAndrew's research points to something uncomfortable. Gossip is not a corruption of social life. It is one of the tools that built social life in the first place. It enforces norms. It punishes cheaters. It rewards cooperators. Without formal laws, gossip was often the only law. Think about how that plays out even now. You do not need a manager to tell you a coworker is unreliable. Someone mentions it once, in passing, and suddenly you adjust how much you trust them. No paperwork, no trial, just word, pass person to person, doing exactly what it did for your ancestors around a fire 40,000 years ago. So why does gossip feel shameful today if it served such an important purpose? Partly because modern society has actual institutions now. Courts, contracts, credit scores, police reports. We built formal systems to do what gossip used to do informally. So gossip started to seem redundant, even petty, in a world with paperwork. But paperwork cannot tell you who to trust with a secret, who will show up for you at 2 a.m., who talks about you the moment you leave the room. For that, you still rely on the ancient system. Whispers, warnings, word of mouth. There's also a darker side researchers have documented. Gossip can be weaponized. It can spread false reputations as easily as true ones. A rumor does not need to be accurate to spread. It only needs to be interesting. Evolutionary psychologist Sarah Word has studied how gossip functions as a status tool, not just a safety tool, showing that people often gossip not to protect the group, but to elevate themselves within it. Sharing information, even damaging information, makes the sharer look valuable, informed, connected. It is social currency, and like any currency, it can be counterfeited. This explains something you have probably felt but never quite named. That strange thrill of being the one who knows something first. The rush of telling someone news before anyone else has. That is not vanity. That is a very old instinct rewarding you for being useful to your social group, the same way it rewarded your ancestors for reporting a threat or a betrayal before anyone else could. It also explains why exclusion feels so painful. If gossip built human cooperation, then being left out of it, not knowing what everyone else knows, being talked about instead of talked to, would have been dangerous. Literally dangerous, in a world where your survival depended on group inclusion. That is why being excluded from conversation, even a harmless one, can trigger something close to real anxiety. Your brain still reacts as if your place in the tribe is at risk. Here is the twist most people never consider. Gossip is not the opposite of trust. It is one of the mechanisms that creates trust. Groups that gossip effectively, sharing accurate information about who is reliable, tend to cooperate better and survive longer than groups that do not. Silence is not always virtue. Sometimes it is just a missing warning system. Of course, none of this means every rumor deserves belief or that gossip cannot cause real harm. It absolutely can and often does. But understanding why the pull exists changes how you might respond to it. That urge to lean in when someone starts a sentence with "did you hear about?" that is not a personal weakness. It is tens of thousands of years of social survival compressed into a single reflex. So the next time you feel that pull, that itch to know what happened, who said what, who is in trouble, pause for a second. You're not being nosy. You are running software installed by evolution itself. Software built to keep small groups of humans alive when the world outside the firelight was full of real danger. You checked your phone 3 times during that conversation. Not because you were bored, because underneath all the small talk, you were doing exactly what your ancestors did to survive. If this made you see gossip a little differently, hit like. It helps more than you'd think. And if you want more of this, the hidden science behind the things you do without thinking, subscribe. There's a lot more your brain has been hiding from you.